Well, they're just stepping out in the hall to talk. Okay. Yep.
Okay, good evening and thank you for your patience. Welcome to the today's the 14th meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Zoning Board of Appeals, a volunteer advisory board appointed by the City Commission. Mr. Eldridge, are there any announcements or changes to the original agenda?
Yes, we do have, the first change to the agenda is going to be that the last item, which is for 231 East Ransom Street, that item has been withdrawn. That was the application for the use variance regarding the marijuana facilities. And then the second item of note is we are going to start the meeting tonight with the second item on the agenda, which is 3433 Oakland Drive. And Sign Art is the representative for that request.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the acceptance of last month's minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is there a second? All in favor of approval of last month's minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now explain our procedure for tonight's public hearing.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
We need to do the roll call vote, and also I want to remind the board members to turn the microphones on when you speak. I know we got to get back in the habit of that now that we're back in person. Thank you.
Will you, Pete, run the roll call vote?
Harrington?
Hello, am I on?
Yep, you're on now. Yep.
What am I doing a roll call vote for?
Just confirming who's here
Oh,
for the
I'm
record.
sorry, yes, I'm present.
Doan?
Present.
Lager?
Present.
Vanden Hamburg?
Present.
And we understand Chair Carroll is en route right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now explain our procedure for tonight's public hearing. For each request, the secretary will read the application into the public record. The applicant or their representative will then have 10 minutes to provide their comments. Following that, the public is invited to step up to the podium and, starting with those in favor, clearly state your name and address and present your comments within the 4-minute time limit. Following all comments from those who wish to speak in favor of the request, we will invite those who wish to speak in opposition or otherwise comment to do the same within the 4-minute time limit. After this, we will close the public hearing on the request. Once the public hearing is closed, the board will then conduct what is called a finding of fact, where the board states what they feel are the facts of the request. The board must approve the finding of fact first. Therefore, the first vote that you hear is not a ruling on the request, but the finding of fact. Then the board discusses the request in order to determine a ruling. The board reserves the privilege to ask questions of people who have already spoken, even though the public comment portion has been closed. Once discussion is ended, the board will move on to a roll call vote. A full board consists of 6 members with 4 votes required to grant a non-use variance or a use variance. Since we're starting with 4, the vote will still require 4 members to vote in favor in order for the variance to pass. Christina, would you now read the first case into the record, which is the second case on our agenda?
Right. First case, second case.
Yes.
Sign Art Incorporated, on behalf of the property owner Edward Fletcher, is requesting a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, Section 7.3A1 to authorize an installation of a 6-foot-high, 32-square-foot freestanding sign for the office building, where there is no sign allowance identified for an office building in the RS5 district.
Thank you. Applicant, you may now step forward.
evening. Thank you for thinking first, so I appreciate that. I was trying to avoid coming before you tonight. I could have added this to the agenda 2 months ago, but piece of the agenda instead of updating sign ordinances. Anticipating the change, so maybe I can. Anyways, Pete and I talked about this, city staff, several months ago, when Mr. Fletcher contacted me that he had a long-standing, the long-term tenant signed up in, Mr. Hamilton, and he needed a sign for his tenant. And, so at that time, as you know from the background on the project, we, residentially zoned, signage allowances were very limited. So when I consulted with Pete on this, he said, well, timing is pretty good with this. If you can wait till spring, we're updating the ordinance that would grant a 32-square-foot monument sign. So in anticipation of that, we designed and moved forward with essentially a plan.
Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Fletcher for this sign. As Pete's already mentioned, it is meets the ordinance that is soon to be adopted.
Yeah, it's out for public comment right now,
Okay,
so we're still, let's say 2 to 3 months out.
okay,
You know, hopefully less than that, but I'm just going to give you a conservative timeline.
cool. And rather than wait, we'd like to do it now if all possible. So we're kind of putting the carriage in front of the horses a little bit. But the tenant he's in the space. As you could imagine, it's, as you've driven past this property, you will drive right past it without noticing that building being there because of it being set back. And if I can answer any questions for you in the meantime.
Looking at the picture of the sign, I think it's in here, but how is it lit?
It is internally illuminated.
Okay.
The background of the sign is opaque. The lettering and the logo itself is translucent, so it's a very soft lighting. The only white light that's going to come through is going to be on the edge of the letters that are projecting through the sign face. Its intention is to be understated, but yet still provide the impact of a lighted sign, as he will and does see clients early hours and evening hours as well.
All right. Good.
So if you look in the right-hand corner of the drawing that's provided with the application, you'll see the design intent for the night view.
Oh. Nice. All right. Thanks. At night it's dark with the.
Excellent job. You did an excellent job on the information you provided, and I feel like I have a clear vision that this sign is beautiful. So to confirm, the sign is going to be 6 foot tall and 10.4 inches wide?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And it's black, a black background with the Hamilton Law PLC and the H in the logo red.
As you would see it at night, correct.
Okay.
The background is actually white. It's just it's an material.
At night.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for the applicant from anyone? No?
No, could you repeat the sign, I mean, the dimensions?
I think it's 6 feet tall, is that right? And 10 feet 4 inches wide. And Pete, you talked a little bit about this, but this area here is being rezoned, or is simply the sign ordinance changing for this?
Well, this is in one of the zone districts where the sign standards are being updated. So essentially, the R districts or residential districts right now have specific signage for residential occupancy, and then they have signage for special, what uses qualify as special uses in the residential zone districts. And so those are typically things like schools and schools, churches, youth centers, a variety of low-intensity, quasi-commercial uses. However, there is no allowance for a commercial building that's in the residential zone district when you look at the sign regulations right now. And so, looking back at the records in 2019, that's when the use variance was granted to construct the building. Well, it probably should have been addressed at that point. But at that point, they were just looking at, this is the project, a 5,000 square foot multi-tenant office building for this site. And which it really wasn't significant until there was a tenant in the building, because Mr. Fletcher just had a private office in there, or has a private office.
He does.
But now that there's a tenant that, would like signage for direct their clients, this matter, came up earlier this spring, and, well, actually late last year, I think, is when it first came up, and then it came up again early this spring. So, it is something that we are moving forward with. In fact, if anybody wants to review them, they're on Imagine Kalamazoo, our website, under our ordinance updates. And what that basically lays out in the amendments proposed is the allowance for a 32 square foot sign for a non-residential use in a residential zone district, which would cover this commercial building.
Got it. Thank you. All right.
I have some concerns about the fact that, this was a residential neighborhood, and there are 3 houses across the street from this that at one time looked into the country club grounds. And then now they're looking into your beautiful building. And then now they're going to have this 6-foot tall, 10-foot 4 wide sign showing the red into their living rooms. Now, I thought you had mentioned that it's a soft light. Is that LED light strong enough to go into those living rooms?
No, most definitely not.
Okay.
It's north and south,
Okay.
and so in the residential, it's obviously west side of the property.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
The adverse effect that we have.
Uh-huh.
It's not, the LED light sort of kind of gives us that, it's not a direct, exposed picture. It's because within the sign itself, it's actually soft.
Soft. Okay.
The alternative to this, what you see quite often, is people put floodlights on them. Very few use floodlights with shields. It probably should be a requirement in a lot of buildings of sorts for that type of thing, but it's not. And quite frankly, if it was floodlight, it'd be, that might constitute something offensive. So this is by far the kind of a gentler approach to it. And, not that you get back to this, but it's definitely more expensive. But it's the kind of look that you would expect when you would provide to a first class facility.
Office.
Facility.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite anyone that wishes to speak in favor of the granting of this variance to please step forward. Seeing no one, if anyone wishes to speak in opposition, this is also the time to do that. And seeing no one, we will close the public.
Mr. Chair,
Oh.
we also need to check with any call-ins.
Oh, I forgot we're still doing call-ins. Yep.
No call-ins at this time.
All right, thanks. In that case, I will now close the public hearing. And Christina, will you read the motion of finding in fact?
I move that the finding of fact for location 3433 Oakland Drive shall include all the information in the notice of public hearing dated February 2nd, 2022. 17 notices of public hearing were sent and 0 responses were received. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. There are no additional bits of information. The finding of fact shall include those documents just described and also the facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Applicant reported that they designed a sign in keeping with future ordinance, but as it will not be approved for at least 3 months, wanted to do it now. It needs signage as building is set back, means building can be easily missed. Reports the sign, I misspelled something. There. Sign will be lit, but night view will be black background with soft lighting. 6 by 10 feet by 4 inches will be the sign dimensions. Staff reports local uses of the area are mostly low-intensity, semi-commercial. Applicant reports signage will not face nearby homes.
All right, thank you. Is there a second for the motion on finding of fact?
I second.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye,
Aye.
and opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Now we'll open, now I'll ask for a motion for the granting of the variance.
Okay, 1 second. That's what I was doing. I make a motion for the granting of the variance for Sign Art Incorporated on behalf of the owner, apologies, let me start again. I make a motion to approve the variance for Sign Art Incorporated on behalf of the property owner, Edward Fletcher, is requesting a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, Section 7.3A1, to authorize installation of a 6-foot-high, 32-square-foot freestanding sign for the office building where there is no sign allowance identified for an office building in the RS5 district. Please note, this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request only for variance regarding the item described above.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All right, it's now open for discussion.
Well, I'm in favor of the sign and the situation. My only concern is the ordinance being updated soon. I'm sure staff can't give us guarantees on when or that it'll be approved. I'd just like to hear from staff or attorney, if we approve it, is there any downside potentially to the applicant or the community if the ordinance, is there any value in waiting until the ordinance is in place so there's not a need for a variance? Or could we put a condition on the variance that it expires in 6 months so that there's not a variance that runs with the land forever when the ordinance takes care of it?
Well, the variance would essentially be, it would no longer be needed once the ordinance is adopted, because the proposed residential standards, assuming, well, those are not my concern. I think the residential standards we've put together are going to remain the same from our early draft, which is out for public review now, through the approval process. So if this variance request proceeds tonight, gets approved, the sign ordinance gets updated in say 3 months, then the variance just kind of falls away. It's not really necessary anymore. Staff wouldn't need to look back for a variance if they wanted to replace the sign down the road with another 32 square foot sign. So I don't think it doesn't create any harm. So that would be my comments on that. So my hesitation on assuming when it's going to get approved, because it's a sign ordinance and signs, especially commercial signage, is a very controversial topic in many communities, and we've just put this out for public review. So it's more the commercial zone districts and the signage, alterations that we've laid out in the amended sign regulations that may require more research based on comments we receive. So there could be delays, but I don't see the delays coming from the residential district standards that we're proposing.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to be in favor of this. In looking through the factors that we consider when granting a variance, a dimensional variance, since this is in a residential area, I look closely at will the granting of this variance negatively affect adjacent land? And I mean, it's right next door to a school with signage. It's, half a block away from of sign variance we granted at Lakeside, and with the comments made about, the sign being perpendicular to the residences across the street, and the sensitivity that seems to have been put into how it will be lit, I don't see that this will negatively affect adjacent property or land, so I will be in favor. Any additional discussion? All right, Pete, can we do a roll call vote?
We'll start with Ms. Harrington. Doan,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Lager,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're changing chairs at this point.
Musical chairs.
No, everything's ready.
Oh, thank you.
It's right there.
Oh, thank you.
Give me just a second to,
I'll apologize while you're doing that. Is this one? Test. I apologize to the board, and all applicants and staff for my tardiness. We were putting in 200 tree orchard, and we had a water line at the end, and I lost track of time while we were fixing it. So I apologize, but the trees are watered. All right, this is my first night, so I have a second apology, and that is, bear with me while I get my rhythm here. Will the board secretary read the next application into the record? Yes.
Yes Acquisitions LLC is requesting a use variance from Appendix A, Chapter 4, Section 4.1, to authorize the redevelopment of a mobile home park on this site where in the CC district, this is not a permitted land use.
All right, will the applicant step up to the podium and provide your name and address? You have 10 minutes.
Sorry, could you repeat your name?
Is the mic on?
Test, test.
Love it, thank you. All right, please.
As you guys are aware, we submitted an application for a zoning variance for the parcel of land on 3400 Stadium Drive. We are attempting to purchase this parcel of land contingent upon our ability to get the zoning request. If, as you're aware, we own and operate the two mobile home communities next to Stadium Drive, Twin Leaf Stadium, or Twin Leaf Properties and Yes Americana.
Excellent. I'll jump in here
Okay.
too. All right, so thank you all for your time. A couple things that I just want to talk about, and I know staff has kind of put together their own letter and recommendation here. You know, there's the standards that we have to meet. I think we wrote a letter to you guys, you know, just kind of some of the standards that we feel as though we meet in order to be necessary to qualify for this use variance. So one of them is, does the strict interpretation of the ordinance, you know, deny us from that? You know, like Brian said, there's several mobile home parks that are actually in the commercial zoned properties. And so, you know, we're just trying to do what both those properties are doing. The other one is that, is there any hardships that are unique to this? And again, I know Pete has lined out several hardships. We've got several hardships that we thought of. So we've got some overlap there. With this only having 50 foot of frontage, that's a very, very difficult parcel to develop. Obviously, the bulk of the parcel is in the very, very back of the parcel. There is a high-speed rail line that's going to be, you know, adjacent to the bulk of the property. Trying to get any kind of real big commercial development in there, it's going to be tough. And as Pete pointed out, you know, this property has changed hands many times. People have been trying to develop this property, and they really haven't been able to come up with any kind of commercial development that's going to fit this property and work with this property. The other item that we had is the parcel directly south of us used to be the old Wayside building. That property obviously has, I mean, that's a prime real estate, right? That's got everything you would want for commercial property. And, you know, they on that property still haven't been able to develop that property. So, you know, they've got a lot of things that we don't have, and they can't develop it. So we're hopeful that our, you know, our residential community would work better in the back of the property there. And then, are there any special circumstances created by the applicant? We really, I mean, we haven't taken any kind of circumstances that, you know, we're not causing this use variance. You know, the city, they did their zoning study, and, you know, they kind of thought that this would be a great commercial property, whereas, you know, as Pete mentioned in his staff report, it's changed a lot of hands, so it's kind of a difficult one to develop. The other one here being, is this the minimum action necessary? Yeah, so really, I mean, to develop this property, it's either we, you know, as a mobile home community, we either have to rezone the property, right, or we have to get a use variance. Going in for a rezone, as you all know, is difficult. There's a lot of standards you have to meet. Your future land map has to reflect the fact that, you know, whatever we're trying to rezone it to, and then, you know, there's a lot of legal things that we have to meet, which we wouldn't be able to do. So really, the use variance is the minimum action that we could take. And then, will granting this negatively affect the land? You know, like I said, and there's not a lot more to say here about it, but we got a couple mobile home parks right there. You know, they own both of them. They're great. They're doing really well. They're well maintained. They look good. So we're confident that that'll work. And then, will this be consistent with the ordinance? So again, like I just said, you've got a lot of standards in your ordinance that you have to meet. I've spelt out all the different ones that we would meet. But again, we're right by other mobile home parks as well. So just a couple items I wanted to point out. And like I said, Pete has also got a lot of good points in there that we didn't think of as well. So we're happy to answer any questions that you may have for us.
Thank you.
So this property was a mobile home at one park. Will you be able to like use the infrastructure that's there?
No, so what we're planning, really we're going to clean slate the property. You know, I'm assuming that all the infrastructure, it's probably dilapidated, it's old, it's not going to work for how we're going to lay the new development out. So our plan is to just clean slate it, all new infrastructure.
Okay.
I had a friend that lived at Americana Estates quite some time ago, and I live on the west side, and I had the time, so I drove through all the properties today. Obviously, I couldn't get into the former Franklin Estates that you're looking to convert back to a mobile home park and redevelop, but I looked at it from Wayside West. There is a great need in our community for affordable housing, and I was pleased with the, especially with the Americano Estates. It seemed a little newer, and I found the green space. There was this big green area with a nice new playground and some sort of colorful concrete pad to play games on and things like that. I couldn't find a playground or anything at Twin Leaf. Did I miss that, or is there something in the works for Twin Leaf?
I believe Twin Leaf has some playground amenities kind of in the northeast corner, I believe.
Okay.
They do.
So I just missed that, okay. All right. All right, well, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Van den Hamburg. Beth.
Yeah, they are.
We pride ourselves on building communities and our mission statement, and we live in our community, we have to adhere to sort of guidelines. And so we do our best to maintain a clean, positive image. And it, you know, it's something that we work hard at. We have the perception that we have to overcome. So with the group next to the property, that the purchase, I don't see that.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, those wishing to speak in favor, you're invited. Seeing none. Now, those who wish to speak in opposition are welcome to speak. Seeing none. Do we have call-in comments? Thank you.
None at this time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
I'd like to make a few staff comments. As it was alluded to by the applicant, since the closure of the former Franklin Valley Estates mobile home community on this property, which was around 2008, there's been several attempts to redevelop the site for multifamily apartment buildings, and none of those really gained legs. So, this provides an opportunity to bring this space back to a use that did work very well for it for many years. As the applicant mentioned, it's got limited frontage, so it's zoned commercial, but it only has 50 feet of frontage on Stadium Drive. It has, let's just say, zero visibility because it's virtually 25 to 30 feet lower elevation-wise than the parking lot of the Wayside site in front of it. So it's got some unique challenges, and I think that's led to the complexity of trying to get a redevelopment project to go on this site. But I wanted to mention that, and also to touch on the rezoning option, and that was looked at closely by staff. We have a residential mobile home park zone district, the RMHP. However, it was felt that that was not the direction we wanted to go for Stadium Drive. That is a commercial corridor through and through. And for this unique circumstance. We did not want to, go with a rezoning that would permanently position this property to be a mobile home park, for many years to come. At least with this use variance route, it can be a mobile home park. It could, at a future date, convert back into some commercial use if the property in front of it changes. So this was actually the direction that staff guided the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the board have any additional questions for staff or applicants before the finding of fact? Here, very well. Hearing none, is there a motion for the finding of fact?
Yes. I move the finding of fact for 3400 Stadium Drive shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated February 23rd, 2022. 194 notices of public hearing were sent and 1 response was received and is part of the record. That response was from James Pollock of the Hinman Company. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. The finding of fact shall include all the documents that were included in the packet delivered to the board and all those facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Brian Doherty and Alex Fay spoke on behalf of the applicant. Applicant is attempting to purchase the property contingent on the granting of tonight's variance. Applicant operates 2 adjacent or nearby mobile home parks. The property at issue has 50 feet of frontage on Stadium Drive, and the bulk of its 10 acres is toward the back of the property without visibility from the road. At the rear of the property is an Amtrak railroad line that makes development somewhat difficult for many uses. The property has been targeted unsuccessfully for development, in part as a result of the uniqueness of the land and how it's situated relative to the road and the railroad tracks. Applicant noted that the wayside building that is directly in front of this property has been struggling to be fully redeveloped for some time as well. And staff also noted that there have been a few attempts to redevelop this property that fell through. Applicant indicated their experience operating mobile home parks and indicated that though there was a mobile home park in here, they will start with a clean slate and replace the infrastructure and build from the ground up. Applicant also addressed concerns received by letter from the Hinman Group, which operates the property adjacent to the south, I guess, of this. And that's that.
Thank you.
Chair, can I ask a question, because I do have one now?
Please.
What happened to the other mobile?
Yeah, just hit your mic button one more time.
I wanted to know what happened at the other mobile home. Like, did something crazy happen? What occurred there that did the business model just not work, or what happened?
So why did the former
Previous,
mobile
yeah.
home park that was here?
Correct.
That was, it was, I know it was somewhat run down, but what brought about the demise was the owner of the wayside property that sits between this parcel and Stadium Drive acquired the mobile home park at the time and was then looking to redevelop it. And so when he found what he thought was going to be that suitable redevelopment project, that's when the eviction notices went out, and so all the folks had to relocate, and then within 6 months they demolished all the remaining mobile homes that were in the park, and then it just sat waiting for the project, which nothing happened in 2008. They tried again in 2012, and again that wasn't able to move forward either. And so it then changed hands from that entity to the Plaza Corp company, who also purchased the former Wayside site in front of it. And so they've been the landholder for the last few years, and then they somehow got connected with Yes Communities. So that's really, what happened. It really was shuttered with the anticipation of a new development going there that never came to fruition.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have a second for the second the motion of the finding of fact?
I second the motion for the finding of fact.
Thank you. Mr. Eldridge, I do the roll call, the voice vote, or you? Remind me.
You would do the.
Very
voice
well.
vote.
Thank you. Those in favor of the finding of fact, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed, the same. The finding of fact motion passes. Is there a motion regarding the pending application? Or do you always want to read them?
No.
Mm-mm.
Motion.
Yep. The finding of fact has been approved. No, it's after the motion. Okay. Thank you. Is there a motion for this application?
I make a motion for Yes Acquisitions LLC for the use variance from Appendix A, Chapter 4, Section 4.1, to authorize the redevelopment of a mobile home park on the site. We're in the CC district. This is not a permitted land use. Please note this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the item described above.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The off-mic conversation was about in which order we do our discussion. In the correct order, we do our discussion now. Thank you. Is there anybody that would like to speak about their opposition or support?
I'm in support of this. In a former life, I was a home visitor, and I had many people that I had to go and hang out with in Twin Leaf. The property was impeccably maintained. The management of the property was extraordinarily diligent about maintaining the rules and the decorum, because I got in trouble. My boss got called because I sped through there one time. And so I just need to, Remy cannot come back if she speeds like that again. So I am absolutely in favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Very well. Hearing none, Mr. Eldridge, can I have a roll call vote?
We'll start with Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Lager,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Your request is approved. Thank you. The board secretary will now read the next application into the record. We are on 437 Stone Street.
Austrin's Family Dentistry is requesting a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, 7.3, A1 to authorize the installation of a 9 square foot, projecting sign for this office building where there is no sign allowance identified for an office building in the RM-15C district.
Thank you. Will the applicant step to the podium and provide your name and address?
Dr. Mara Madison, representing Austrin's Family Dentistry, PLLC,
Very well. Thank you.
for 437 Stone Street.
Very well. All right. The floor is yours.
We are requesting a replacement, or I am requesting, I'm no longer with my father, he just retired, so I'm taking it over, and we kind of freshened up the whole outside, and we'd like to freshen up the sign that's there currently, which is going parallel with the road, and so I would like to raise it up and have it kind of higher so patients can see it when they're driving perpendicular to the road. and it would be 36 inches, I brought in the template, 36 inches in diameter, and about, I think on the, you might have the actual, I think it's 8 7/8 inches of like a metal bracket. So altogether about 46 7/8 inches off the building. So I'd like to have it a little bit higher up mounted, not only for patient visibility, but also we're right there on the street where there's a lot of student housing, and during football games, like we've had, that sign that's currently there has been beat up a lot by, either kicked in by drunk college students going by or drinks splashed on it or whatnot, but I just want to kind of get it up off the ground. And so that is my request.
Very well, thank you. Questions from the board?
It looks to me from the picture that is submitted that this is, the sign totally overhangs your like landscaping feature in front of the building, and you couldn't reach it in any way from either your entryway or the sidewalk, the way it looks. Is that true?
I'm not understanding what you're asking.
So the way it looks to me in this is that the sign itself is completely over the landscaping feature, and there's no way that you could reach this from either the sidewalk or the entryway.
Correct. You would have to stand in the landscaping to touch it like how she's holding it up.
All right, good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I was seeing that right.
And it's still going to be under, see how the roof line kind of goes out? It would be, I purposely want it actually under the roof line still, just for weather purposes, yeah.
Okay, I see that.
Very good.
Well, you answered my question. That's
Sure.
perfect. We go to St. Tom's, so I'm in
Yes.
that neighborhood
Yep.
all the time, and I was able to drive over there today, and I just want to clarify that it looks like it was a porch at one time, and it's been glassed in.
Correct.
And then you've got like a gable where the roof is, and then you're going to put that metal circular sign up where that gable is, kind of underneath.
Not that high, actually.
Not that high? Okay.
No, I'm going to put it very similar to where she's holding it in that picture, because I would like to have it mounted, see where the light is and see where the brick is.
Okay.
We just had the sign or the siding done, so I didn't want to mount it onto the siding.
Okay.
And also, we've had some trouble with, bees and squirrels, and so the less holes in the siding, the better. We just totally sealed that thing up, so that's why I wanted to mount it into the brick.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I've got it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm unclear, so is this for the applicant or tax staff too? Like this, they're not allowed to pick up on the building as it currently stands based on the zoning? Is that what it's being?
Well, in this, like I said, we never know what's going to come in as applications for the zoning board of appeals, and to have a new office building that a use variance was granted for, and having to figure out how to address that under the residential sign regulations. And now we're talking about an office building that went into active use as a dentistry in 1957. In both circumstances, there is no sign allowance because the dental office is not considered a special use in that RM15 zone district. So there's technically no allowance for a wall sign, to answer your initial question.
Let alone a perpendicular wall sign?
Correct.
Because non-law had to come for the perpendicular variance?
Yes.
Okay.
And what I can say in the sign ordinance amendments proposed, we are not classifying projecting signs and wall signs differently. It's still considered a wall-mounted sign, even if it projects from the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question for staff. All right. So just to reiterate that in a couple months, when this new signed ordinance goes in, there won't be any question about this sign.
No,
it's not allowed.
this would be a conforming sign under the new R district standards.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Hearing no other questions, thank you. Now those speaking in favor are welcome to approach the podium. Seeing none in favor, those opposed are welcome to speak. Seeing none, do we have any call-in comments?
None at this time.
Thank you very much. Staff, other comments?
Yes, I do have a few comments to make just to kind of close a few loopholes here. You know, as was talked about with the special circumstances, obviously related to, you know, this office use not being considered a special use in the residential zone district. So therefore, there's no assigned sign allowance for it, even though this office has been in use for over 60 years. So it, you know, this is a unique circumstance that it's been a successful business run all that time. And there have been, and I believe there is an example of one of the older signs that was once hung that would have been essentially, it would have projected from the building. So that is a sign from the 60s, basically. So yeah, so anyways, yes. So, you know, so there has been, you know, different manners of signage over the years, but very minimal. This is in a historic district, but this sort of sign proposed also meets those general historic district requirements. So that's, you know, that's part of the sign permit review process, that it gets looked at by our historic preservation coordinator. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention the uniqueness of the area, because it is an RM15 zone district, yet we're talking about signage for an office building. And in this case, you know, the other residentially occupied properties on the same side of Stone Street as this office are all student rentals. On the opposite side of Stone Street, St. Thomas More and the Catholic Diocese own virtually everything that's not part of Western's KDPS station and the University Roadhouse restaurant. So it is not your typical, you know, residential area per se, and I just wanted to make note of that too. Stanwood is the next street over to the east.
Not a problem. Does the board have any additional questions before we establish the finding of fact? All right, do I have a motion for a finding of fact?
Am I on? Okay. I move that the finding of fact for 437 Stone Street shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated March 29th, 2022. 62 notices of public hearing were sent and 0 responses were received. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. In addition to the information and documents contained in agenda packet staff provided for the request, the Zoning Board of Appeals received additional documents on the request, including nothing. Right? We have like this packet.
Correct.
Yeah, we have this packet.
Correct. There was no public feedback received.
Right. Okay, thank you. The finding of fact shall include those, what was submitted to staff, just described, and also the facts and comments made during public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Ostrand's Family Dentistry is requesting a dimensional variance to authorize the installation of a 9 square foot sign where there is no sign allowance identified in RM15C, in the RM15C district. Dr. Mara Matson, who is a third-generation dentist, I just want to say that, indicated that she wanted to get the signage up off of the ground and would, I'm sorry, I can't even read my writing, goodness gracious. And staff indicated that the signage in the request is, are you saying this, Pete? If I'm saying this inaccurately, then please correct me, would be a conforming signage. What her request is would be a conforming use in RM15C. Is that accurate? Did I say that right?
What she's proposing, yeah, would conform to
What could be, yeah.
the sign ordinance amendments.
Okay, sorry, I tried to capture that. Alrighty, the strategic vision alignment is that it supports a complete neighborhood, residential areas that support a full range of people's daily needs. And they want to be visible to the public, and that's what I'm hearing, and that's it. That's what I have.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion for the finding of fact, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, the same? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. May I have a reading of the motion regarding the pending application?
Austin Family Dentist, I make a motion for a dimensional variance for Austin Family Dentistry from Appendix A, Chapter 7, Section 7.3A1, to authorize the installation of a 9-foot square projecting sign for this office building, where no sign allowance is identified for an office building in the RM15 district. Please note this variance will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the item described above.
Thank you. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Now, the board has discussion time. I can start with, I used to be a patient of Dr. Mara's and her father's, probably 10, 12 years, and then I changed insurance. I'm sorry. I tried to get back in. They said no. But I moved here from Phoenix, and we never had hills there. And when somebody recommended the Ostrand's Family Dentistry, I tried to find it, going up and down those hills there. Took me a while to find it. So I think this would probably be an improvement in the situation for your signage. And, if this was in the middle of the block, down 3 doors, and then you were surrounded on both sides by residential, I don't think it would be appropriate. But in the context, I think it's appropriate. Anybody else?
I'm going to be in favor too. I think that the street itself and the uses on the street would favor having a sign here, even if the new signage amendments weren't coming in. So I'm going to be in favor of this.
Thank you.
I'm in favor simply from the historical perspective of it. I think it's amazing what this has meant for Kalamazoo. Congratulations on your dad's retirement. I think it's great. So absolutely.
Thank you.
I will be in, I will be in favor, given the neighborhood and the nature of the signage. I think it's perfectly reasonable, and I think it'll be good.
Very well.
And I will be in favor as well. Congratulations. And I really love the thought that went into the design of that sign, the template of it and the lettering. It just has kind of a 1940s feel to it. Yeah, it looks great.
Mr. Eldridge, there will be no surprises, but can we get a roll call vote?
Sure. Let's start with Mr. Lager,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes. The request has been approved. Thank you. All righty. Would the secretary now read the next application in the record? That would be 667 Carr Street.
Chastity West is requesting the following variances. 1, a use variance from Appendix A, Chapter 4, Section 4.1, to authorize a group daycare of 7 to 12 children in her residence at 667 Carr Street, where residential daycare is not a permitted use in the M1 district. 2, a variance from Appendix A, Chapter 4, Section 4.2, K2C, to authorize a group daycare on a local street where group daycares are required to be located on collector or arterial streets.
Thank you. Will the applicant step to the podium and provide your name and register your address in the book?
Yes, my name is Chastity West. I reside at 667 Carr Street. I'm requesting a variance to run a group daycare. Currently, I'm running a family childcare where I service 1 to 6 kids per shift. In the area where I'm at right now, it's a M1 zone, which is a manufacturing zone that doesn't allow for a group daycare setting. It actually would allow for a daycare center setting, which my group home would be, less use. So I'm asking for permission to be allowed to operate a group daycare home with the capacity of 12 children per shift.
Thank you.
Could I ask, how many children do you currently have in your daycare?
I currently have 7 enrolled right now.
Okay, so it would just increase it. And thinking about the street, there is some residential there. Is there ever any problem with drop-off or pickup times and congestion with traffic or anything like that?
No, there's never any problem with that. And also, the way the property is designed, I have a pretty nice amount area for parking and stuff like that, so that would never be a conflict because my driveway can probably fit about 6 cars or more in there.
Okay, good.
Thank you. What's the difference between a home daycare to a group daycare?
There's no difference. The difference is a group daycare and family daycare. So the group just means a bigger capacity, like servicing 12 kids per shift versus 6 kids per shift. Yeah.
Always minors, correct?
Say that again.
Minors, no adults.
No adults.
Okay.
In special circumstances, you can keep special needs, if it's necessary and if you have documentation from the doctor and stuff like that, but no adults, only kids.
Cool. I just was trying to understand, not that it mattered age-wise. So the practical difference, I guess the operative word is group, indicates more people. This 12 number, is that a number that the state regulates for group homes, or where did you come up with this number? Where did we come up with this number?
It's state guidelines. I'm licensed by the
Very
state,
good.
and so
Cool.
the next level for a home daycare provider would be the group capacity. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
And if I can interject, so the group capacity, so the home daycare is 1 to 6 children, group is 7 to 12. So even if Ms. West wanted to add just one more child and have 7, she would have to apply for this next level up license called the group daycare license.
Which I've already applied for.
Thank you.
Is this like a group home, like for displaced youth, or is this like daycare?
It's a daycare.
Daycare, okay.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you.
So this falls under the child care licensing, so
There's two components to this request. Is that accurate?
yes, there are two components.
Let's make sure we're clear on that.
There is the use variance because of the zone district, and then after review of the standards, it was determined that there's three criteria for a group home. One is that the exterior has to retain its residential character. Two, in order to be a group daycare, it has to have 100 square feet of play space per child, which this has. The third one is that it has to be located on a arterial or collector street type in the city of Kalamazoo, not on a local street. And unfortunately, Carr Street is a local street. Portage Street is a collector street, which the separation distance is essentially the Little Caesars property, which is 125 feet. So that's where that dimensional variance comes in, just to
Thank you.
calculate that.
I just wanted the board to be mindful of the two different requests.
Well, I need more clarity about why a commercial, it's a commercial childcare facility is allowable, but not a home childcare. What's the, why, like, what's your perspective about
Okay,
that?
that is accurate. So the M1 zone district, the manufacturing limited zone district, allows for a daycare center, a commercial daycare center. However, it is silent on the allowance for a home daycare or group daycare operation.
When you say silent, you mean like what?
It's not permitted. It doesn't identify it as a permitted use in that M1 zone district.
So it's explicitly not a permitted use?
So yes, so it is not listed as a permitted use. So there is one type of daycare that is allowed, but that's the commercial daycare center, and that's all that's allowed from a daycare standpoint in the M1 zone.
I don't understand.
And the difference would be live in or not live in. So daycare center implies it's a business and there's no resident. And the group home or the daycare home is a live-in resident.
Right.
Okay.
We don't want, because if she's allowed to keep children, then she can do it 24 hours a day. She can do it like within the timelines that she's outlined. Like, why not? Why is it not like, what was the, why is that, why not? Why not? Why can't she do it? Why is it not a permitted use?
So what you're asking is, yeah, why?
Why can a commercial business do it, but why can't she do it?
Well, in most cases, you wouldn't have a group of single-family homes in a manufacturing zone district like this. So
Okay, well, that's not.
this sort of circumstance typically wouldn't come up. So that, to answer the why, I guess that's part of the unique circumstance here.
Sure, yeah.
So when they set it up, they weren't anticipating there was going to be single-family homes and that those homeowners were going to possibly want to run a home daycare from those residences.
Okay.
So,
It says she has a
Does
house.
that-
She has a house in a commercial district,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they didn't plan for that. So she's allowed to do a daycare center in the commercial zone, but it doesn't speak to the home.
Yes.
And she has a home and she lives there, so she wants to specifically be able to do that in her home
Okay.
and not have
Yeah.
a center.
yeah, and that sort of misalignment of the zoning was something I referenced in the staff report, that the Edison neighborhood plan even referred to, looking closely at the zoning and existing land uses for better alignment, because there are some areas like this. This is not the only one where you have, a grouping of single-family homes that are in a manufacturing zone district. And so, that's, it's not ideal, and this is one of those unusual circumstances that arises
Okay.
when the zoning doesn't align with the underlying land use.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you for your time. Now we'll have those speaking in favor. Or do you have anything else to add, I should say? You have 18 seconds. Thank you. Sounds rewarding. Excuse me. Now those in favor are invited to speak. Seeing none, those opposed to the variance request are invited to speak. Hearing none, I wonder if we have any phone-in comments?
None at this time.
I appreciate it. Mr. Eldridge, do you have anything to add?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Just real quickly, I want to reiterate, we kind of covered the fact that this side of Carr Street is in the manufacturing zone district, but overall, looking at the totality of Carr Street, it is predominantly residential with 9 residences located there. And I think I've covered the dimensional variance element, but we can revisit that because these should be voted on separately. So if there are, separate questions related to the dimensional variance, I would recommend discussing and voting on the use variance first and then circling back to that. Other comments related to the use variance, the future land use map does show that the east half of Carr Street, which is closest to Portage Street, is in a neighborhood edge district, which is kind of where you have that blend of commercial and residential. And then the west half is shown as R2 residential. So, really our future land use map is more in alignment with the existing land use than the current zoning map. So that was an interesting revelation there. But overall, we've covered, most of the circumstances here. And if it's not clear as far as the allowance of daycare in the M1 zone, just let me know. But I think we've covered that base. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for a use variance?
Finding fact.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you. Before we get to a motion on the variance, do I have a motion for the finding of fact?
I move that the finding of fact for location 667 Carr Street shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing. There were 2 that were sent, March 29th of 2022 and April 6th of 2022. The first notice was for the use variance to have a group daycare, and the second notice was for the dimensional variance because it was on a local street. 31 notices of public hearing were sent and 0 responses were received. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. In addition to the information and documents contained in agenda packets staff provided for this request, the Zoning Board of Appeals received additional documents on the request, including letters of support from Oscar Johnson and Christopher Carter. The finding of facts shall include those documents just described and also the facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as follows. Chastity West is requesting a use variance for group daycare and a dimensional variance to authorize daycare on a local street. The applicant is looking to have the capacity for 12 children. Chastity has adequate parking area and is 125 feet from Portage Road, which is a main street. And I will conclude.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I second it.
Thank you. Do you also, are you in favor?
Aye.
Everybody else? Aye? You have to say it out loud. All right. We have passed the finding of fact. Or, I should say, are there any opposed? Hearing none, the finding of fact has passed. Is there a motion regarding the pending application for use variance only?
I make a motion for a use variance from Appendix A, Chapter 4, Section 4.1, to authorize a group daycare of 7 to 12 children in her residence at 667 Carr Street, where residential daycare is not a permitted use in the M1 district. Please note this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the item described above.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Thank you. Now we'll have discussion on the use variance only.
So I'm going to be in favor of granting this use variance. Looking at the factors, I think it's a somewhat unique situation just because this is zoned manufacturing. Anyone on the street would see it as a residential street, but it's, you know, really adjacent to a main thoroughfare, Portage Road. So based upon what the zoning is now and what the use is, this seems to fit what that area can have, should have, and hearing the experience and the operation that's already in place, I'll be in favor.
Thank you.
I'll also be in favor, and I think that there's something that I am having a visceral reaction to surrounding the zoning and the fact that we're going to be putting a childcare facility there in a home. And so this is not to do with Miss West, this is to do with like the way that I don't know what can be done to be more supportive so that it feels like a more congruent like use of the property. Like I have a question about that. I don't know. It just all feels like, but there's homes there are people that live there, and people that live there have children, families live there, and we need childcare facilities for them in a variety of different ways that people need to, they need to, yes, I'm absolutely in favor of this, but it feels uncomfortable that this entire thing, like their homes in a manufacturing district, and I'm curious to know like what we're gonna do in our city to kind of shift that a little bit. So Pete, maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's actually, the update of the zoning map is one of the future items that's in process right now. I mean, we haven't got to the manufacturing districts as far as evaluating the manufacturing zones and the underlying land use and seeing where we have inconsistencies. We're actually doing that right now with the commercial districts. So, and that's, like I said, there's, these ordinance amendments I talk about, which I'll elaborate more at the end of our meeting here, but that's another step. And I thought it was important tonight to note that after reading through the Edison neighborhood plan, that when they put their neighborhood plan together, they were acknowledging, yes, this is a deficiency. It's one of our goals that this gets corrected. So it's a known quantity, and it's on the neighborhood's radar, it's on the city's radar, that this needs to be looked at, if that helps.
You mentioned that, I can say that I am having a reaction to that, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else? Hearing no further discussion, Mr. Eldridge, could I get a roll call vote on the use variance? Motion.
Okay, and again, this
Or
is,
make it-
I made
You
a
made-
motion.
yep, yeah, this is for the use variance. Yes, Ms. Doan moved it, Ms. Harrington seconded it. We will start with this listing. Let's start with Ms. Doan,
Yes.
Ms. Harrington,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Lager,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes. The motion is, the use variance has been approved. We have a second variance request. Could I get a motion for that?
I make a motion for Chastity West for a variance from from Appendix A, Chapter 4, Section 4.2, K2C, to authorize a group daycare on a local street where group daycares are required to be located on collector or arterial streets. Please note this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the item described above.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Now we can discuss the variance, or the motion for the variance. I'll be in favor of the motion. I think its proximity to Portage Road makes it congruent with the use, or the variance, excuse me. Anybody else?
It does dead end. There's also, I have to look at the map, I'm drawing a blank now. There's another street that tees off of it and wraps around where the U-Haul business is located.
I forget that street name, but yeah.
Yeah, so there's homes, there's homes down that side street also.
All right, hearing no other discussion, Mr. Eldridge, could I get a roll call vote?
We'll start with Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Lager,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
The motion, the application for the variance has been approved. Both of them are approved.
You're welcome.
Yep. Good luck. Good evening.
You too.
I see a number of people in the audience. If I remember correctly, the 231 ransom, was that removed from the agenda?
Yes, that was removed. We did make an announcement at the beginning of the meeting, and,
Thank you. Okay.
yeah, so we did make an announcement. That one is, I don't know if it will ever resurface, but it is off our agenda for tonight. I do have a few brief comments to make, if that's okay. First of all, I want to compliment the board on completing the Michigan Association of Planning Zoning Board of Appeals training. I know that was at least, a little over 2 hours, that program. But who's counting?
But I for one appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, no, it was good refresh. It was good.
Well, you're welcome. Your comments that were made at that, what was that, our February meeting, we understood, what the board, that there was a few steps the board would like to see as far as the training goes. That was the first piece, to get, some professional training. And the second piece is the finding of fact, which Charlie and I are working on. We're going to have some information for you next month on that. Some sort of a little cheat sheet to help better better hear comments and know what should transfer to that finding of fact sheet in front of you.
That's appreciated.
So-
That's the toughest part of the job.
Yeah. So we understand there's like
We can't tell you what
No.
the finding of fact should be, obviously,
No.
or your conclusion, but we want to get something there that ties into the standards, what you're looking for under each standard, what to take notes on and record, so that when you make your finding of fact motion, you're tying it back into those standards. And that helpful for you because you have the confidence you're making a good finding of fact. That helps me potentially if someone wants to appeal the finding of fact, and that protects you. If we have a good solid finding of fact,
Good.
an appeal is also based on whatever facts are in the record, because the law does recognize this is a quasi-judicial body. Now, we happen to have one attorney on this board, but for the most part, we don't have professional legal people, and that's recognized. So you aren't held to quite the same standard a court would be in an appeal, but still we want to have a good finding of fact, and we want to try and make that as easy for you as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I thought the finding of facts were really good tonight. Guys, we did good.
I agree.
Yeah.
We were.
Sound like we knew what was up.
Not all of us are.
Sounded like it.
Yeah, and I would say since you've done your training, I have received some very thoughtful, pointed questions about these particular cases. Chair Carroll asked about additional information on what those draft amendments to the sign regulations actually are, and Ms. Van den Homburg reached out to me and had several questions about two cases, most specifically Stadium Drive, and what exactly are we going to end up with here if this use variance gets granted, and really kind of digging deep and on what this entity is doing as far as managing other mobile homes in Kalamazoo, and are they the type of organization we want to see acquire more property and expand, as well as focusing on the difficulties with the redevelopment of that particular site on Stadium Drive. So, it's already showing itself that everybody was listening during the training, and that's much appreciated.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
With respect to the questions, and I think I can speak for Pete here as well, we do welcome questions ahead of time to clarify things. I welcome questions on legal matters. Just a reminder, if we are asking questions or having some discussion there, we shouldn't be doing chain emails and copying everybody on the
There's no
board.
quorum, yep.
Because then that gets into a potential Open Meetings Act violation, and somebody could be saying, well, there's deliberation and decision ahead of time, and we can't do that. So that's just a reminder. We aren't doing that now, and just don't do that. But one thing that stood out to me tonight that evidenced your training, you're seconding motions.
We did.
You're not asking for support. It's a second, which technically is the correct way to do it. You support a motion by voting for it.
There you go.
So,
Cool.
just an observation, not criticizing anything you have done, but
Yeah. So I'll keep this brief, but just to touch on the ordinance updates. So, I know we talked specifically about the sign ordinance tonight, but I want to let everybody know that at our planning commission meeting last Thursday, a recommendation was approved for amendments that address the marijuana ordinance. So right now we have separate location criteria for medical facilities versus adult use marijuana facilities. So we're essentially just aligning the two to make it less confusing, and then there's a few other wordsmithing changes going on there. Then there was some general code edits. One of them had to do with the bed and breakfast, like that. We had that bed and breakfast request that, where the individual, because it wasn't a single-family dwelling, it was a duplex, that caused a variance. And that situation, we felt that or living in the house directly next to the dwelling being used as a bed and breakfast, that those circumstances, the whole intent was to have the manager of the bed and breakfast close by, to keep an eye on things, to be responsive if service is needed. So there's changes made to that. Off-street parking was another one which came before this board most recently, and I guess one of the largest ones was graphics packaging. So the industrial regulations have been changed to allow for more parking when looking at manufacturing and shift-type workers. So we've dealt with that. We put in place an exemption for commercial buildings that are 2,000 square feet or less that are not in the CC zone. What that means is if you have an older commercial building that may be on the edge of a neighborhood, it may or may not have the appropriate number of off-street parking spaces. But rather than discouraging reinvestment in that building by saying, oh, you don't have enough parking spaces to open that back up as a retail shop or a bike shop or something like that. There's now an exemption for small commercial buildings. So we are trying to catch these things and get some of these code edits codified in these amendments. And then as far as the commercial districts, the CC zone district specifically, that's being moved over from Appendix A to Chapter 50, because eventually everything will be in Chapter 50, all our zoning regulations. But part of the transition of that commercial community district involved the changing of the language that limits residential units on the ground floor. So now residential units will be allowed on the ground floor in the CC zone district. There's going to be limitations on what's called occupied space, which is the front portion of the building facing the primary street in certain circumstances where you can have residential units in the back of the ground floor, but not occupying the ground floor front face.
As a side question, is that what happened to the old goat property? Because there's the cannabis in the front, but do they have residential? Do you remember the old goat?
Yeah, on Michigan Avenue there, near
there's
campus.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's, I don't go into those places.
Well, that one is residential. I'd have to look at that one. I didn't think there was any, yeah.
I live right next to there. So I think that's the same case where what you're describing is commercial out front, but residential can be on the ground floor behind the
Yes.
storefront.
Yeah. Now, I don't think they have any there yet.
Now, remember they built some out of compliance on that
Oh,
ground floor.
okay, they're right, you're right, they did. But yeah, something like that would now be, conforming once these amendments move forward. So anyways, this list of things that I mentioned is actually going to the city commission next month for the first read. So, that's the first wave, and then we're working on screening and landscaping and signage is coming next, so as well as the rest of the commercial districts. So, there's going to be several, batches that we're working on this year.
Cool.
Any conversation on the Airbnb issue? I feel like that's an issue that many cities may be facing. We've seen it a few times, and even if it's a statement reaffirming what we have, it might be helpful guidance for consistency in our decisions.
I will bring that up.
With a can of worms.
With a can of worms.
That's all right. That's
Full in a biohazard suit, just
yeah, I mean, I can tell you that, that annual report we put together that kind of goes through all the use variances the board saw that year and what was granted, what was denied. I mean, those annual reports are part of was pushed into the decision-making of these ordinance amendments that are now moving forward. So what happens, at this board is definitely not happening in a vacuum. We are collecting that information. The ground floor residential was something that would have been nice if we would have been able to move on that a little sooner, but the thought was, let's do that, but let's do that in concert with moving that entire commercial district to the new chapter. So anyways,
Your trepidation about if there being conversation, like what's your aversion? Is there I shouldn't forget that. Is there an aversion to that?
Well, it's just that is, it's got to be looked at as where do you, are there going to be any limitations on that? Because it's really, it's using residential homes in a commercial capacity. And there's individuals that would love to just buy homes in Kalamazoo and just continue to rent them out. And is that really what the families that live next door, want to put up with? That all of a sudden the house next to them is turning over every week or every 3 to 4 days with a different group of people living there. So it needs to be a wider discussion. It definitely needs some public feedback. And then there may be certain zone districts, maybe like RM36, RM15, that are more appropriate in the lower, less intense residential zone districts. Maybe those are not the place to allow, that sort of use. So we got to figure out, what limitations we want to put on it, what are the appropriate zone districts. But yeah, it's complicated, and it's not in the ordinance right now. So you're right. Our focus was more like what's in the ordinance and how do we update that and move it to Chapter 50. But this is something else that also, yes, does need to be thought through because it does keep coming up.
Twice next month.
Twice next month?
I'm joking. I said twice next month. They come in pairs, the signs and all this stuff. What else do you got, Mr. Eldridge? Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Anybody? All right, then we'll adjourn it.
All right.
Great. Good night, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Good job. Started off like running up the stairs. I'm
A little embarrassing, but it is what it is.